Oh,
The
yeah.
funny thing about the NFL media types you're talking about, like you can find them in every sport. It's ultimately the same. It gets to the same like core thing with each of them. They just have different idiosyncrasies for each sport, and it's kind of fun to dig into it. Like I look at some of the film nerds in the NFL space, and it just reminds me of the same type of obnoxious like NBA Twitterati types. In terms of everything is kind of about driving home a preconceived notion around ideas of what works and what doesn't. It's a lot of it's a lot of OG Anunoby is the best player in the league types.
Well, let's ground our conversation. Let's do some exposition. This happened last week, and my entry point in a lot of this is just somebody who covered basketball, but I watch the 49ers on Sundays, and our nation weekly is roiled in Brock Purdy debate. And so that's how I watch a lot of this stuff happen. And so what happens last week, the 49ers beat the Seahawks. Brock Purdy has a passing play where he throws a bit off his back foot while getting pressured, and the ball is in the air for a long time, and the safety misplays it, and then Deebo Samuel takes it to the house. So it was a bit of a crazy play. It was the right decision to throw it to that place, but there was enough air under it that something, I don't think it could have been intercepted, but Deebo could have gotten hit. So it was a suboptimal throw that ultimately worked out as well as it could by happenstance. And Benjamin Solak, now of ESPN, formerly of The Ringer, says this is the sort of play that drives the film watchers nuts when it comes to parsing Purdy's impact on the offense. And it got this big old reaction with a lot of people going, who are the film watchers? I mean, it's this funny thing about internet discourse.
How pretentious is the film watchers? It's like, yes, those of us who watch the All 22. This is what we're talking about.
Yes, the film watchers. So they're like aficionados of film. They're watching their Orson Welles. They're really great appreciators of foreign cinema. And do
you really think he's digging in on because it's easy to talk, the top 5 to 10 teams and like the guys who quarterback them in general, right? So it's like Mahomes, Josh Allen, whether you think Brock is in the top 10 or not, the Niners are clearly a top 10 interest team, and they should be one of the 10 best teams in the league if they figure their stuff out, like that sort of stuff. But do you think he's digging into like Aiden O'Connell tape? You think he's digging in on? Because there's like 10 or so teams who just have dead end quarterback situations that no one's debating them. We just all acknowledge, well, they don't have an answer, and maybe they get one in the draft.
Yeah, there's not a lot of Jacoby Brissett. Well, now that Brissett's been benched, even less so. But okay, so there's a lot here. I don't want to turn this into two Bay Area guys defending Brock Purdy's honor. Ultimately, Brock's career is going to be whatever it is. It's going to tell the tale. And in a way, covering Steph Curry made me more zen about this, because back in the day when I was in my 20s and Steph was on his rise, I would feel like I needed to be part of this internet battle over his reputation, and I needed to explain to people that they didn't get it, because I'm not saying they're the same level of player, but it was a lot of the same stuff where this wasn't expected, so therefore it's not happening. It was an anchoring bias situation where there's no way Steph Curry can be this good because look at his frame, and he wasn't supposed to be a superstar. And it was sort of when he was an all-star, there's a bit of, okay, that's fine, that's cute. But when he actually supplanted the other point guards and was clearly the best point guard, and then it was, well, is this guy the best player in the league? There was this umbrage, there was this denial, and I just felt like I had to fight it out on his behalf while covering the team theoretically objectively. But the problem is when you're close to something, you actually are better informed about it. And so I would see takes on the situation that didn't appear to reflect reality. And ultimately, in the end, you just realize that over time, if somebody has a good enough career, it just is the argument. And you don't actually need to fight these battles. This is a digression. I feel like you want to say something while I'm digressing before we get into the meat of the topic. But what do you want to say there, Sam?
Oh, I mean, you are correct. And you're saying, like, I spent a lot of time working with streamers, predominantly Gen Z ones. And one of the funniest things is they treat Steph Curry the way our generation treated Kobe Bryant. Like, they're not debating him. He just one of the best ever. It just is. It's a proven fact. Steph is the best point guard of all time. Magic Johnson, who the hell is that? That's my grandfather's player. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just because I come at it from a similar perspective to you. Like, I remember the rise. I remember all the internet arguing about Steph, and it would dominate not just the internet. It would dominate every like talk show. Every First Take style show would be a, is he really that good? How can he win the MVP when he's not better than LeBron? And all this sort of stuff. And it was so easy to get into the weeds and like feel like every argument was so important. And a decade later, it worked out the way it was supposed to.
Yeah. I get a gold star for arguing that Steph was better than Ty Lawson in 2013. That goes up on my mantle that I made that argument. Everybody cares so much about it. But in the moment, and you can almost see the generation gap. You can see younger people more passionately arguing these things. And if you've been through it, you just know the career will ultimately tell the tale. And you don't need to get so invested in your opinion. Maybe express your opinion, have your take. The reason Bill Simmons is so popular is that he'll have his take. I'm not saying don't have your take. I'm just saying that it's not going to be all adjudicated here and now. It's not going to be settled today. But this whole topic got at something, which is, I think the different sports and their nerds, I say that lovingly, no disrespect, they just have their different peculiarities. And the NFL one is so strange to me. These film watchers, Sam, I don't understand the film watchers. It's an odd thing. Benjamin Solak, I should say, had some really good content and makes some good observations that are useful to me about football. I'll give an example of how film watching can help. He noticed that the use of motion that became very much in vogue, and I think it was being done by the Dolphins. They were doing that sort of cheat motion, guys just running super fast. That became quite in vogue, and he sort of seized upon how the Chiefs, when they played that London game against the Dolphins, figured out a way to time that up and effectively use that against the Dolphins. He'll come up with an observation like that. I don't want to isolate him and say that he's useless. He's quite a good commentator, but there is this huge cohort of people who get granular in the film, and it just becomes this defense against anything that's happening. In the, and you can say you're wrong about your take, and they go, watch the film. You go, no, this guy you said is good actually isn't good, and here are his stats over the last 3 years. Well, if you see the film, you'll notice that it's all somebody else's fault, not Trevor Lawrence's. And I don't see that in the NBA, Sam. I mean, am I wrong? You're more into it.
You do. I actually think you do, particularly with, man, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do a defense of beat writers, kind of a defense of your upbringing in some ways.
Oh, yeah. My people.
One thing I believe strongly is the mental attributes for what makes a great athlete are arguably more valuable than
the same as a great beat writer. I totally agree, Sam. It's the same thing. That's exactly what you were going to say. I read your mind. Sorry, you were saying.
So here's the thing. What made, like, let's use the Warriors since we started there. What made Steph Curry and Draymond Green great? Obviously, Steph has outlier shooting ability, but I would say a lot of it has to do with their mental ability to process the game and just drive. It's stuff that doesn't pop on film. Whereas, anyone can look at Andrew Wiggins or OG Anunoby and be like, ooh, 6'7" athlete. He looks like what a basketball player should do, and he has enough skill set to do it, right? And I don't know why I'm fixated on those. Actually, I do know, but that's a different conversation. And when you're around a team, as you will say, I feel like those mental qualities of who's really kind of crazy about the game and who can really reach that next level, who's smart enough to understand what's going on the court and course correct in real time. That stuff translates in ways where you can't see it watching film as a guy at home on the internet, as obviously. It's just so the film watcher types, and I think it's true in all sports, they tend to fall back on physical attributes because that's what you can see. I don't know. Maybe Trevor Lawrence just doesn't care enough. Maybe he's not smart enough to be a good quarterback. But you know what? I am qualified to say when I watch him throw the ball, the dude has a great arm. He definitely has the arm talent to be a great quarterback. He checks all of these superficial boxes of what a quarterback should be. He's mobile. He can make every throw. He's got, like I said, he's got the arm talent to do everything. But when you watch him, something's missing, and it's not, it's probably between the ears is really what it is. Now, I'm not saying it can't be course corrected or fixed. Like, I really don't know in that case, but like, his mistakes are mental. They're not an issue of him losing a ball. It's an issue of him making a bad throw, feeling pressured and making mistakes. It's those sort of things. I
completely agree. And yeah, there's an argument for the environment is suboptimal, but at a certain point, if you're paying somebody $50-60 million, they should be situation stable. And that's the idea of it. It's just odd that the nerds, as it were, in football kind of lean on the Billy Bean, not the Billy Bean, but I'm talking about the Moneyball, like the old scouts, like their take on what Billy Bean was supposed to be. It's like, he's a 5-tool player. And you go, yeah, but the stats, the production sucks.
Does he hit?
It's like, yeah, but does he hit? It's like, he's got the tools, and you're just going, you get there with football because there are so many confounding variables that people can always make excuses, versus in baseball where it's, look, he's up at the plate, it's just him against the world. But I've made the argument that it's almost paradoxical. You're just better off in football trusting somebody's individual statistical production because there are so many variables constantly in flux. It's almost like everybody is up against this constantly changing situation, and therefore what they do is just what they do. They're all in a fucked situation. Even if you've got a great coach, you have injuries all over the place. So you just need to trust the data. But that's not the nerd wisdom right now, to trust the stats.
I mean, isn't it like a backlash to the stats in some ways? I mean, part of it is, I just think everyone wants to be perceived as being like Zen voodoo smart. So what is the coolest thing when it comes to sports? It's not saying, well, the numbers say this. It's being the guy who's like, I see it. I'm Jerry West. I looked in his eyes. I knew that. And so that's kind of where the metamorphosis of the film thing comes, where they just like watch this and they're trying to, it's like the whole like draft pundit thing. You know, you want to watch these guys and be the ones like, oh, look at this arm talent. Look at this. Look at this. This is going to be the next big thing. And I've just learned to accept that, like, look, man, you may know what you're looking at, and you may have a good idea of the physical attributes, but unless you're the person who's interviewing them and actually knows what you're looking for and you're talking to someone, you will just never be able to make that sort of evaluation, you know, because so much of it's like, is this the right person to invest in?
Yeah. And also, well, there's a lot to what Bob Myers knew, even if maybe as an announcer we can argue about whether he leaves something to be desired. But there's also this aspect of, you can be a film nerd up in the lab, but if you're not at a certain level of knowledge, you're just going to get things wrong. Because I remember my friend is a financial advisor, and I remember asking him about some aspect of investments, and he said, yeah, I know just enough to be dangerous. And it's this idea of, I know a little that would make me overconfident and make me make a mistake because I don't really know the terrain like I would need to know the terrain to give you responsible advice. I'm just enough informed to be dangerous. When you watch JT O'Sullivan QB school, you see somebody who actually knows, and you go, oh, I don't even know what I don't know. This is on a level, what's happening out there, that is so beyond what the film watchers, as they call themselves, would know, because they haven't played professional football. And so one of the reasons why my takes on football are just grounded in data is because that's something that I can understand, that is fairly predictive. But I look at these, I don't know the route concepts. I don't know what they're trying to do. And O'Sullivan's good because oftentimes, and he is at the upper 0.001% of somebody who knows, oftentimes he's saying, yeah, I don't exactly know what they were trying to do here. He'll go, I don't know exactly what was attempted here. And you just realize that, A, it's so complicated. It's just so complicated. I think O'Sullivan's got really good insights. But B, it's like you're not going to find anything. You're not going to glean anything from the film in most instances that's going to replicate. That's the hole in the film watcher game. Yeah. They don't find anything that replicates. If you can beat the data with your observations, maybe you have something, but they don't tend to do that. And so then I just wonder, why is this a thing? What's going on?
I mean, I think it's fun also. It's like kind of an obsessive trait. You know, you kind of get to a point where you want to prove you're right. And then that's where you really get into trouble, in my opinion. Everyone's been proven wrong over the years. At some point or another, you felt so strongly about a specific take, the opposite happened. And of course, the only answer is to double down with film watching. So
well, Stephen Ruiz of The Ringer, and I feel bad for him. I do. He's the guy who had the ultimate anti-Purdy take, and
he gets to be the face of it for whatever reason. He's not the only one, but he's the one who is like the anti-guy.
He is, and it's this thing of this is an odd comparison, but Chappelle, I once saw a comedy routine where he was talking about when Michael Richards flamed out with like the crazy N-word rant, and how Chappelle, his ultimate takeaway from watching it was, oh, I'm actually more of a comedian than I am a black guy, because he felt so bad for Michael Richards in that situation. As opposed to offended and outraged.
I never heard that, but that's kind of hilarious.
Yeah, and I'm sure with the Chappelle delivery, it was so much better than my recapitulation. But I felt that way with Stephen Ruiz, where I went, oh, I'm actually more of a media guy and a beat writer than I am a Niner fan. That was my takeaway, watching the way he gets crushed and attacked whenever Purdy does well. And he has earned it. He has leaned into it. But I just think I've got that softness and that knowledge of being out there and having a take, and having all of my reputation is invested in this idea that I know more about this sport than the fan. And I'm just completely wrong. And everybody can attack me and dismiss my opinion. And I just feel... I just feel bad. I feel bad watching. I don't go to Stephen Ruiz's Twitter feed after Brock Purdy does well. I just feel bad. That's me. That's my softness born of having the job I once had.